everyone, and thank you for joining. If you're joining us for the first time today, a special welcome to you. Welcome to our webinar, Conquering Stress in College. So my name is Roanna, and today's webinar is hosted by a community service club I'm a part of called Five&Two. This series started because many of us in Five&Two have mentored college students or recently graduated ourselves, and we wanted to share tips and tricks that we've learned over the years. Yeah, so today's topic is stress management. At first, I thought it was quite funny that I was chosen to be the subject matter expert for stress management. I wasn't sure whether to take it as a compliment or insult. I think stress tends to get a bad rap. Typically, no one wants to be stressed out, much less around someone who is stressed out. And we all know and have heard of the negative health effects of stress. Some of you may even know that stress is highly linked with mental health issues like anxiety and depression. In America, at least, college students face a mental health epidemic. And yet, many college students were never taught how to deal with stress in a healthy way. I certainly can't claim that what I'll be teaching today will fix all of these issues, but my hope is that you can walk away with even one new strategy to combat stress. And hopefully that will set you up to embrace life's ups and downs better. So what will we be covering today? First, I'm going to go over common sources of stress as a college student and how to shift to a healthier mindset towards them. And then I'm going to go over common responses to stress and share practical tips. So at this point, I wanted to survey the crowd. A poll should be appearing on your screen. When it does, go ahead and answer for yourself what you find to be the most stressful about college. I'll give you 15-20 seconds to do so. Okay, cool. So the results are rolling in. Oh, interesting. Social life and relationships tops the chart, but almost everything else is second. Yeah, so personally in college, I was stressed out by most of these. And let me share a little bit about my experience. Academics and grades. This one's a given in college. I studied bio at Cal and was pre-med for the first 3 years of college. Enough said. Club positions and responsibilities. So throughout college, I volunteered at a local hospital every week. I was also an active labor coach and a member of a Christian fellowship. Eventually, I had a leadership position in my fellowship. Although I loved having all of these roles, juggling them proved to be stressful. Babies rarely arrive on schedule, and there was always someone to meet or something to plan. Jobs and internships. Well, I had 2 internships and worked 15 hours a week in college. And finances, I'm sure many of you can relate to this meme. College is expensive. Not only was I out of state, but I was also responsible for my tuition costs, which included figuring out how to take out loans, how to save money when it came to textbooks, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so a lot of you guys voted for social life and relationships, and I think it's because this category encompasses a lot. Making friends, especially freshman year, keeping up with your friends, and resolving conflicts. I was lucky to end up sharing my college experience with many friends, but sometimes there seemed like there was no time to keep up with everyone. And then in terms of family, this might look different for different people, but for me, even though I was a state away from my parents, they live in Oregon, I was still the first child of immigrant parents who needed my help with things at home. So I would always get these kinds of phone calls from my mom. And then future, yeah, while balancing all of these different things, looming in the background is the big question. The big question you try to avoid at family gatherings. What are you going to do after you graduate? I mentioned earlier that I was pre-med, but after I dropped that in junior year, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And as graduation loomed, that stressed me out a lot. And health and safety, I added this category, even though it didn't impact me much during college. I'm sure it's a huge one for many of you with COVID-19 this year, disrupting all areas of college life. Maybe some of you need to stay behind to support your family, or others of you are just wondering how to keep yourself safe on campus. Yeah, so after expanding on each of these categories, you're probably wondering if it's even possible to avoid stress in college, which actually brings me to the first and very important point I want to make. Stress is not necessarily bad, and therefore not necessarily something to be avoided, but rather something to learn to manage well. And let me explain. Professor Kelly McGonigal, the author of a book called The Upside of Stress, Why Stress is Good for You and How to Get Good at It, writes, stress happens when something you care about is at stake. It's not a sign to run away, it's a sign to step forward. And I think that this is really true. If you think about some of the most exciting things that can happen, wedding vows, a game-winning shot, trying new things, these are usually high stress, but stressful isn't the first thing that comes to mind. Rather, we think of these events as exciting, as moments of elevation. And why is that? Well, in her book, Professor McGonigal says, feeling burdened rather than uplifted by everyday duties is more a mindset than a measure of what is going on in your life. And she goes into greater detail about this through a scientific finding that made her rethink stress. Researchers studied over 30,000 participants over 8 years, and what they found was this. High levels of stress increase the risk of dying by 43%. Okay, understandable, but the surprising part was this. This only applied to people who also believed that stress was harming their health. Those who reported high levels of stress, but who did not view their stress as harmful, had the lowest risk of death of anyone in the study, even lower than those who reported experiencing very little stress. So I think what this shows us is that it's not just our circumstances that determine the effects of stress on us. Rather, it has a lot to do with our mindset. But the first thing we have to do in order to change our mindset is to know what's on our mind. And that's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is so important when it comes to combating stress. There were times in college when I didn't even know what I was stressed out about in a given moment. I just knew that there was a lot on my plate and I was stressed. I was demotivated to tackle any of it and wanted to avoid it altogether. But to assume that all stress is bad is the first mistake to make, because this can create its own self-fulfilling prophecy. Instead, examine your stressors and try to see stress as the product of your own perceptions. So now we're going to do a little exercise. This exercise is called When in Doubt, Write It Out. I'm sorry, very cheesy. But yeah, with a pen and paper, jot down some stressors in your life. Then, categorize them under the following categories: urgent, kinda urgent, not urgent, and something I can change and control, and something I can't change or control, or something that's abstract. So here's mine filled out. This is a typical week or month in college for me. Now we're going to break these down and do some examination. So let's start with the things that you can change. Rather than viewing these as insurmountable, because these are things that you can change, you can now see them as opportunities to learn how to tap into the resources offered to you in college. For my midterm, are there people or office hours that you could still ask for help from? And then just as important as asking what you need to focus on is what do you need to deprioritize? So for example, in a season when you're taking particularly hard classes, which is often in bio, what club responsibilities can you ask to drop? And something I want to note here is that in college, it may often feel like there's pressure to do a lot, just because it seems like everyone else around you is doing a lot. This is where it's important to know yourself, what you can handle, what you want to focus on, and how to draw boundaries. Now we're going to move on to the things that are abstract or that I can't change much right now. So with these things, it's important to accept that you can only do so much about these and instead practice healthy stress responses towards them. For example, there wasn't a whole lot I could do about my student loans as a student. Stressing out about them didn't help. So I made the conscious decision to focus on other things and think about loan repayment when graduation approached. I'm also a Christian, so turning to prayer helped me surrender these anxieties. I also want to caveat this section though. This is not the same as saying that you should just look on the brighter side of things. But the point that I want to make is that it can be taxing to fight something that's beyond your ability to control. Oftentimes, in these cases, the best thing to do is to turn to someone to express how you feel. Okay, so now that we've talked about the importance of your mindset when it comes to the sources of your stress, I want to touch on responses to stress. We all experience stress in our own way. We all have our preferred methods of coping with it. However, not all stress management strategies are healthy, and some may even leave you feeling worse than you did before. I'm going to go into each of these, but before I do, try to recall the things that stressed you out in college and see if you can identify what unhealthy pattern you tend towards, if any of these. So on this list, we have substance use, spending compulsively, under eating, avoidance, and procrastination, especially through social media, Netflix, etc. So the first one is substance use. Smoking, drinking, or using drugs may offer a stress relief in the short term, but after their effects wear off, you may feel more stressed than before. Studies show that alcohol can actually exacerbate stress. Next is compulsive spending. With Amazon so accessible, it doesn't take a lot to resort to this. I know it's tempting. There's a kind of thrill with getting something new. Buying yourself a gift every once in a while is fine, but if shopping or spending money is your go-to method of relief, you may be creating more stress for yourself by putting a strain on your finances or buying things you don't really want. Under or overeating. You may have heard the old saying, stress is dessert spelled backwards. I am guilty of this one, reaching for snacks not because I'm hungry, but because I want to dull the pain of some task. And I know some people who, in contrast, don't eat when they're stressed. Either way, you should try to maintain your regular eating habits when you feel stressed, as eating too much or too little can have a lasting negative effect on your health. Avoidance. It's okay to take a break from your problem to cool off and think of a new solution, because that's active. But ignoring it altogether may not be the best idea. You may not be able to let it go entirely, and the stressor will likely linger in the back of your mind until you can't neglect it anymore. Okay, this procrastination with social media, streaming services, etc. There is no shortage of digital distractions you can lose yourself in to avoid stress. It's important to place limits on your use of technology. Studies have shown that these activities aren't actually stress relieving. And the more time you spend on them, the more you'll fall behind in your work and add to your overall stress, which turns into a cycle. Now, for each of those stressors we talked about earlier, see if you can swap out your unhealthy response with these. These are healthy responses to stress. So 1, take a break / self-care. 2, spend time with loved ones. 3, write it out. 4, problem-solving techniques. 5, get professional support. And 6, deep breathing. So take a break, self-care. If you feel overwhelmed by all that you've been doing, take a break. Schedule an afternoon where you can turn off your notifications and you don't have to do anything but read your favorite book or watch a movie with friends or go for a run. This isn't counterintuitive to not procrastinating. The difference here is that you've been doing a lot. You have a plan to return to your tasks, but you just need some time to recharge. Spend time with friends. Humans are inherently social. We need connectedness to survive and thrive. There is great power in going through life's ups and downs with others you trust. If you're in a catch-22 because you feel like you don't have a group like that in college, check out our webinar on making friends in college, where we offer tips on this. You can find us on YouTube under 5&2 or scan this QR code to go straight to the video. Okay, the next tip is write it out. If your busy schedule is making you anxious, sit down and see what you can change. This is kind of like the exercise we did earlier, so you're one step ahead. The key here is that visibility to your stressors gives you a sense of control, and control leads to calm. We'll actually be hosting a webinar soon on time management, so stay tuned for that. Sometimes the stress comes from a specific problem. It's easy to just ruminate about the problem, which causes more stress and anxiety. Rather than engaging in negative thinking patterns, it is more helpful to strategically approach problems. Untools.co is an awesome website I use to dissect problems and do critical thinking. And then the next one is get professional support. If you feel like your stress is detrimentally affecting your ability to function, there is no shame in reaching out for professional help. Most colleges offer mental health resources through their university hospital, and it should be easy to look up. Last but not least, deep breathing. Most people take short, shallow breaths into their chests, but this can make you feel anxious and zap your energy. Instead, practice deep breathing. And what is that? So we're actually going to do this together to end our time. This is exciting. I've always wanted to be a yoga instructor. So get into a comfortable position on your chair and place your palms on your thighs. Step 1, breathe in through your nose, but let your belly fill with air. Really make sure your belly is filling more than your chest is. Step 2, breathe out through your nose and then feel your belly deflate fully. And you'll want to repeat this 3 times. You can do this at any point during the day. Okay, now that we're all nice and calm, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you learned a thing or two about how to conquer stress in college. I've left my contact details up on the slide. If you have any questions or just want to connect with me, please get in touch. And this is actually the second installment of a larger webinar series called 5 Rules for College. To view the full series, check out Five&Two's YouTube channel. I hope to see you in a future installment. Thanks for joining us and stay safe.